So I'm in my office today and I'm thinking about this controversy that I'm hearing a lot about concerning Florida State and the football playoffs. And there's a team that people feel like should be in the Final Four playoffs that was undefeated. And for some people, it feels very unfair of what they've accomplished. And like you're supposed to be one of the four. It's a no-brainer. And I get that. I get the frustration that people feel, and other people are like, no, they don't belong there. There's other teams that are better, and all that matters is that this team is probably better and they should be there. And it got me thinking about sports in general. And here's what I want to say: sports are not fair. Not at all. Not at all are they fair. I used to be a baseball umpire. Trust me, sometimes I was the reason sports isn't fair. And it wasn't necessarily on purpose. Sometimes it's because I was a human and not a smart one. Sports isn't fair. I think about a friend of mine who has a son who's 12 years old, played football for the first time this year. And he's joining this team that's played together for a long time. And so he joins the team and he's given it all he's got. Like he's trying so hard. But no matter what he does, the coaches play the players that are like their sons and people that already been a part of it, and maybe they're better as well. And my friend's son, he gets to play 7 plays, and that is all. He's one of those 7 player guys. Later in the season, he worked so hard and tried so hard that after one practice, coaches said, "Hey, you're not a 7 player guy anymore. You've gotten so much better. You've learned." Well, the next day was the next game, and guess who played 7 plays? And that was it. That kid. That kid went to his dad's truck after the game and he started crying because he thought he was no longer a 7 player guy. I think about a pitcher for the New York Yankees. I forget his name. I could look it up, but I believe it was 1999 or 2000. He was on the roster when the Yankees won the World Series. And this man was not a prominent player. He was just on the roster. Not sure he even played in the World Series, but he was on the team. They won the World Series, and the very night they won the championship, they went out celebrating, and they had limos, and they got in the limo and went to this restaurant, and then got back in this limo, went to this bar, and got in the limo. They just went place to place celebrating the championship. The guy tells the story that between one of those journeys, he sat in the front seat with the limo driver, and he asked the driver, "Is this all this is?" Because he won the championship, but it changed nothing. It felt empty. His whole life, he's played baseball. Since 5 or 6 years old, the ball's in his hand. He keeps doing everything people say he should do: play summer ball, join this travel team, do these lessons, get a scholarship, play pro ball, play for the Yankees, win the championship. And it's like he reached the pinnacle of sports existence, and all he was left with was a pile of emptiness. Sports isn't fair to anybody. I don't think we oftentimes see what happens to people's lives. And I'm not against sports. I love sports. I think they're great for people. But there's an unfair element that occurs when we put sports in the wrong context in our lives. I think about a young man I talked to at a gas station one time. We got into a conversation that was pretty deep. And he was a normal high school basketball player. He wasn't very good, but he was on the team and he played a little bit. He said, when I played basketball, it made me feel alive. I felt something. But he said, when basketball ended for me, high school was over, he said, nothing made me feel that way. I don't think we notice this happening in people's lives, that when they make this massive investment in a sport, the unfair moment is going to happen for every one of them. Maybe it's after they play in the NFL. I talked to an NFL player, came to my house, we had a conversation. He played for a great team, won a Super Bowl, and he said he retired. He went to his game room and he almost didn't survive. He just went to his game room for months, kept the lights out, had to do drugs to survive. Because the whole journey, he did everything and it ended and it was nothing but emptiness. This office that I'm in right now used to be the bedroom of one of my sons, and he played sports in high school. He played basketball. And I remember his bed was just to my left a few years ago. I remember being awake and I was in the living room and I heard him having a nightmare. And his nightmare was about his coach in basketball. He's just a kid trying to play basketball, trying to have fun, trying to get good at this. And unfair things were happening. And I'm not trying to at all put any kind of blame on the coach or anything. I'm just saying these unfair elements, they happen with everybody. I think about this year for Ohio State, their quarterback, Kyle McCord. He was solid. He wasn't great. He was solid for Ohio State. Imagine being the quarterback for Ohio State. But people who know behind the scenes say it was the worst year of his life as a person. He had one of the greatest positions in college football. He's the quarterback for Ohio State. They were like 11-1, and it was the worst year in his life as a man. And now he's going to transfer and go to some other school. Listen, sports isn't fair to anybody. Kevin Durant wins the NBA championship. The next day he was disappointed because nothing changed. Sports is unfair to everyone. And the reason I'm talking about this is we need to see what really happens. Right now with Florida State and this team that's not making the football playoff, we're looking at their team and their coaches. We're like, this isn't fair. Like they're facing? What they're facing isn't fair. They're not getting what they deserve. Can I tell you something? Sports disappoints everyone because it's a picture of what life is. When we think that if I do a certain thing, that I deserve a certain result and my life is going to be great, it's the wrong thinking. So I think it's important to see this because there's a lot of young people who play a sport, and sometimes it's the ones who achieve the most, that at some point, it's like they're on this sports train, and at some point, they ask you to take a walk down the aisle, and they take you to the caboose, and they take you to the back of the train, and they say, you know what? Thanks for playing, but we don't need you anymore in this game. You're too old. You're too slow. You're not tall enough. You're not athletic enough. And they just kind of lovingly push you off the train. And it's just all gone in a second. No one cares that you ever played. Your parents do, your grandparents do. You have dusty trophies and medals hanging from a wall somewhere. But the person is left beside the tracks of the train in a ditch. Like, what just happened to my life? And what do I do with it now? So I just had to share these thoughts because I feel like what happens in sports, sometimes there's a much deeper layer of what's happening in people's lives that I think we need to understand. Because lots of times we sit in the stands and we keep cheering people on, and it helps them make their sport their identity. And at some point, it's over in a second. And these people face a real crisis in their life. And so I think we need to understand this so that we help our friends, we help our kids, we help just people we know who were great at a sport, but then all of a sudden, the sport, like life, is unfair. And in those moments, we need to understand what they're facing and help them through it.